it's actually painful for me to think about myself like objectively in those days. So for my long-term followers, you know that I've mentioned my own mental health struggles a lot in passing, but I still get a ton of questions about specifics. So I thought I would do like a really raw story time vlog here where I could share some of my own disordered eating history and then also talk about where I'm at right now. You know, everything between how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what I'm taking, and if it's working. Also, a quick disclaimer for those with current or previous experiences with disordered eating. I'm definitely going to be talking a lot about disordered eating in this video. So as always, feel free to skip this video if it's not supportive to your journey. I'm also going to be talking about medication and things that I'm personally doing. I am not suggesting that anyone should be following my regimen or taking any of the medications or supplements that I'm taking or tried taking. Always speak to a healthcare provider about your unique case. And also, if you are not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button ASAP. And also follow me over on Instagram and on TikTok at Abby's Kitchen. So for those of you who don't know my full story, I do give a lot more details in my book, The Mindful Glow Cookbook, which is right here. But basically, when I was 17, I had pretty much never dieted before. I never had insecurities about my body growing up. I know I'm really lucky and privileged to have had that experience. Around 17, I moved away from my high school friends. I was living in Peterborough, moved to Toronto, and I basically had no friends, of course. I was starting from scratch. And I had been dealing with digestive issues then. I still have IBS, so nothing really has changed there. But I went to see a holistic naturopath who told me I was allergic to sugar and told me I should cut it out. So I wasn't a dietitian at the time, so I didn't know any better. I just wanted to feel better. So I did cut it out, and I had this list of foods that I was deeming safe, and that list just started to get smaller and smaller and smaller until I was pretty much scared of sugar. And then I was scared of fat. I was scared of all other kind of processed foods, and my body just kept getting smaller and smaller. So it started out as classic orthorexia in that, my goal was never to lose weight. But I would say I have a classic ED mind, a classic eating disorder mind. So, I'm type A, I'm a perfectionist, people pleaser, control freak. Controlling my food just kind of became a coping mechanism to deal with my general life anxiety. While I never had body insecurities or body dysmorphia, watching it shrink and feeling somewhat in control of that by starving myself was almost therapeutic to me. And I was really small. I'm not going to say a number because I think that can be really triggering, but I will say I remember that it hurt to lay in bed sometimes because my pelvic bones would dig into the mattress, and that was painful. It's actually painful for me to think about myself objectively in those days, because obviously I was physically and emotionally hurting, but I also didn't know or really care maybe about what was going to happen to me as a result of these behaviors. And looking back as a professional now, I suspect that my eating disorder potentially played a role in a lot of my health issues that I have now. My infertility, for one, and the fact that I still to this day do not have a proper regular menstrual cycle, and also my digestion and IBS, since we know that eating disorders can compromise proper digestion. So actually my story is pretty common in the IBS world. So it's you remove something from the diet so that you feel better or maybe to lose weight, and it spirals and goes too far and it gets into disordered eating territory. And this actually can cause functional problems with the digestive tract. So it starves the digestive organs of nutrients, and it disrupts good bacteria, and it causes gastroparesis, which is basically when the stomach can't properly contract to break down and move food along. But anyways, that's a whole other huge topic, and it's very interesting to me at least. But if you want me to do a whole video on the intersection between eating disorders and IBS or other digestive disorders, let me know. That would be a pretty cool video, I think. So let me know if you're interested in that. Now looking back, I can see it was a very bad coping strategy. While I felt like at the time that it was meant as like a control mechanism, looking back, I know I was very much not in control. I'll give you an example of how I know that. So I haven't actually talked much about my binging. I've only really talked about my restriction. I was strict so badly in the week that on Sunday nights, I would allow myself a cheat meal. And in order to do that, my rule was I wasn't allowed to eat basically all day leading up to the meal. So I would have tea, chai tea, and this taste of chai tea now still tastes horrible to me because it brings back so many memories. The smell of chai tea reminds me of sadness, really. And then at dinner, I would order all of the highest calorie, top forbidden foods imaginable. And I would like make sure that I would finish everything on my plate. Fries, ribs, wings, nachos, pasta with cream sauce. Like if it was not the most indulgent over the top menu item, it wasn't worth it to me. And then despite feeling sick, so full and sick, I wouldn't be done. I would then have to go out for a separate dessert, and then I'd eat like an entire slice of cake with ice cream and all the toppings. And I had to eat it all. And then the next morning, I would feel so ill. I would have no appetite basically to eat until dinner time. For whatever reason, at dinner time, I would just kind of like still be in the binge mode, and I would eat like half a cheesecake. And then the next day, I would finally be able to eat my normal restricted diet again. Ugh. It's hard to even like revisit these memories because I feel like I locked them up for so long out of just pain. So maybe this is like a therapy session. I shouldn't be joking about it, but that's what it was like. You know, eventually things were getting bad and I went to see a dietitian, which was really my first exposure to dietitians and what dietitians do. And with her help over time, I was able to kind of weight restore. But I'd say my mind was still always thinking about calories. It was always still thinking about restricting and kind of binging, even though it wasn't as extreme. And at that point, I was kind of at a relatively normal weight, although of course smaller than what I'm at now, but I thought it was normal enough. So I started school to become a dietitian. And it wasn't until years later when I graduated and I finished my internship that I was just so grossed out by the nutrition world. I didn't want to think about it anymore. I didn't want to talk about it anymore, that I kind of said, it to my degree. I want to be a food blogger. I kind of wanted to go kind of the opposite direction, but still in the realm of food. And actually, my blog was like the catalyst to my real recovery because I was invited to all these like different food events and restaurant openings and things like that. And I had to decide, I had to figure out how to have a normal, balanced relationship with food. Otherwise, I was going to be having these massive binge-like cheat days every night for work, or I was just gonna be too scared to even go out to any of these restaurants out of fear of kind of not being in control. So basically I just jumped all in. And somehow miraculously, I had the bravery and the courage to just kind of get it to click for me. I could have a couple tacos at a tasting and not need to eat every taco in sight. And I know I'm oversimplifying this because there was, of course, some work that had to be done, and I can go into more detail in future videos if you want, but it was kind of surprisingly easy when I just threw myself into that scary world of unknown calories. I think if I tried to think too hard about it and think, oh, okay, well, if I'm having a tacos for dinner, then I'm gonna have to like eat later in the day. No, like I just had to go all in and just say, listen to your body. What does it need now? And I was able to do that because my hunger cues had been restored from the weight restoration and from working with a dietitian. So I acknowledge that that's not always the case. Like if you've been dieting for a really, really long time, you're not gonna have ample diet cues. You're probably not going to be able to adequately trust your hunger and fullness cues. But when you stop thinking about food in dichotomous terms, the novelty surprisingly wears off pretty quickly. At least that was my experience. Since then, I would say I've basically had a very balanced, uncomplicated relationship with food. You know, I eat treat foods on random days. I eat a variety of foods. I go out to dinner and I don't make myself sick from overeating. Sometimes I have all the fatty rich foods. Sometimes I have a salad. So there isn't crazy hard structure here, which I know is scary as but I guess my structure became like no structure, and somehow I just understood that in my mind. The challenge however, is that my anxiety, which was really kind of at the root of my eating disorder, that never went away. I think it's improved dramatically over the past 10 years because I've done a lot of therapy and I've learned a lot of new, better coping mechanisms that are actually effective. And I also think that motherhood has softened me a bit because, I don't know, I think you just like have fewer to give. I do think in some ways I've kind of just shifted my obsessive compulsive like tendencies from one essential area of life, which is food, to another, aka sleep. So now I have a sleep disorder, and this really took hold when E was born because, parents, you know this, but postpartum will with anyone's sleep patterns. And I think I already had some kind of deep-seated distrust in my body, which then turned into a full-blown sleep disorder. So not sleeping because you have a newborn is one thing, and it's kind of to be expected. But then not sleeping because you're afraid of not sleeping, that's, I guess, a disorder. And it was bad postpartum with E, but it became horrible when I was trying to conceive O and I was miscarrying. Like most nights, I was sleeping like 3 to 4 hours, and there were some nights that I'd call like my rock bottom nights, and I wouldn't sleep at all, like not a single minute. Horrible, 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 horrible memories of that time of my life. Like my days were so hard, and then I'd get to the end of the day and you're so tired and you just feel like, oh my God, I have another marathon that I have to get through. You just were on this hamster wheel. You couldn't get off. That's how I felt. And I did all the things they say to do. No screen time, meditate, podcasts, relaxing routine, you know, all those like meditation sounds and apps. Eventually, what would happen was I would find a ritual that would work, but then I would become so rigid and obsessed with that it was almost as bad and disruptive as just not sleeping. So for example, in one phase of mine, I would basically like watch TV and fall asleep to the TV. But then if anything were off, maybe a season of the show that I was watching ended, or, you know, if we went to the cottage or the room was different, or I started the routine like 5 or 10 minutes later because I went out for dinner, I would just get thrown off of my perfect routine. And then because I was thrown off of the routine, I wouldn't sleep at all. And then I'd switch the routine to like this other routine. So like in another phase, I switched to walking on the treadmill. But again, if anything, that routine, I wouldn't sleep. So basically it meant that I was trapped. And my husband was also trapped because we couldn't go out with friends. Like I didn't even want him to go out alone because if he wasn't home, that would throw me off. It just felt like things were not in its place. Yeah, it was bad. As my therapist put it, she says, everything had to be in its place for me to sleep. And that's not real life. That didn't, and like it doesn't allow for me to live normal life. So I realized I was basically just doing what I did with my eating disorder, but I was doing it with my sleep. Like I was trying to manipulate it and control it as a coping mechanism for my anxiety. In the process, as a result, it was just kind of ruining and running my life. Where am I at today? Well, I'm still doing lots of therapy. That's probably never gonna change. And I'm constantly trying to kind of purposefully with my routine, just enough that I don't get into that OCD like obsession around sleep. But I also need to explore all of my options for actually taking something to sleep, which I can do now because, you know, I'm done breastfeeding and I'm done having babies as far as I'm concerned right now. So first I just did herbals and supplements like melatonin and passion flower and magnesium and valerian root, and they would work sometimes, like I'd say 50% of the time. Melatonin would just like not be enough, even at really high doses, which, you know, we don't want to get into that. So I was needing to take Ativan on top of that. You also don't want to be taking Ativan every night for the rest of your life. That is not recommended. So for lots of reasons, I felt like that was just like an unhealthy habit that I really need to figure out how to break. Next, I tried CBD oil, and I actually tried a whole bunch of different ones, some with THC, some without, and they worked a bit just to take the edge off, but I think I'm also kind of too far gone for that alone. I'm just a little too for the natural route, apparently. So I finally decided I was going to give actual pharmaceutical medication a go. And I gotta say, I resisted for so long, but it's been probably the best decision I've ever made for myself and my health. I just feel like I've resisted because I didn't want to get like addicted to something that I maybe couldn't take while I was pregnant or nursing. But like I said, I think it's safe to say that I'm done and I'm past that phase of my life, so I can start to really focus just on what's best for me. So I'm currently taking something called Dayvigo. I'm not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, so again, disclaimer, this is not a suggestion to take any medications, never mind sleep medications. But anyways, it was suggested to me by my doctor because it's, I guess, unique in the sleep drug world. It works differently than other sleep medications, so apparently it may be kind of less dependence forming, but I don't know. I don't bank on that, but let's be real, at least to me, I feel like at least psychologically, any sleep medication is gonna be somewhat dependence forming, but it has definitely changed my life. It has changed my life. So I find that now I only have like 1 to 2 nights a week where I have some anxiety around sleep. And I know I'm having anxiety when I get up to pee like 10 to 12 times in the night. I know it's not because I actually have to pee, it's just because it's an anxious habit where I become almost like hyper aware of every sensation in my body, whether it's like a little hunger or gotta pee or whatever, and I obsess over it, even if I have like a whisper of a thought that I have to pee, and then it's this obsession that I've gotta get up, I gotta go pee, I gotta go to bed, oh, I didn't need to pee again, I gotta go up, and then I do that over and over and again, and that's just like me and my anxiety. But I know it's working for me because my sleep is just becoming more intuitive and more natural and less ritualistic. So sometimes I read before bed, sometimes I go right to bed and I just turn off the light. And sometimes I'll walk on the treadmill watching a show, and sometimes I go out to dinner and have a drink. Like, it is so awesome to be flexible. I'm now able to gather consistent data that I can sleep, I can do this, my body's not broken. That alone, I feel like helps to ease the anxiety that I won't sleep. The other thing that I did that I feel like it made a really big difference that is like not medication related is that I stopped setting an alarm. So if you remember from my 4 a.m. morning routine video, I used to actually get up before the kids would get up, and I would get like either a workout done or I would answer emails, get a little bit of work done. And that was generally easy for me at the time because my body was just so primed to get up. Like, I just had this energy to go, even though I was exhausted. And I loved that quiet me time. I really did. I also think I was scared not to set an alarm, not necessarily because I would just sleep in, but because I was worried that if I didn't, then I would be kind of in and out of that sleep, always checking my phone, unsure of what time it was, and then thinking like, should I get up? Should I try to be productive? Should I try to answer emails? Should I start making breakfast? Should I get a workout now before the kids are like, I was worried about that keeping me up. And I thought maybe that would make me actually sleep less. And also, I just want to say that like skipping the workout wasn't a rational concern for me. I could be laying in bed at night and I would be able to rationally just tell myself, yeah, you know what? If you don't get up, if you don't have to exercise, if you're really tired, doesn't matter, you can sleep in. But then there was this like always something lingering in the back of my head, in my mind, as I tried to go back to sleep in the early morning, that being like, you gotta be more productive, you gotta do more, you gotta do more, which of course would make me less productive because I wouldn't sleep and then I wasn't rested and I'd kind of just like move through the day like a zombie. So I decided to abolish that morning routine. Abby, you're not gonna work out in the morning anymore. You're not gonna answer emails. You're not going to make breakfast until the kids are up and they are begging you to make breakfast. You're not even gonna set an alarm. You're gonna wait until the kids wake you up because they are calling for you, and then you're just gonna figure out the day. Does it mean some days I don't get in as much exercise or get as much work done in the day? Maybe, but not really. I actually think I'm actually more productive because I'm just better rested. So basically, by removing the pressure I felt at night to get up early, that alone made a huge difference in my ability to just relax. And I know not everyone has the luxury to be able to be flexible on their schedule like that, but I don't know, that has been just super helpful for me. But yeah, when I shot my video on my PEI trip, which you can watch right here, I mentioned that I feel that eating disorders don't always just go away. And what I meant by that, at least in my life, is that they're kind of just a temporary band-aid for a greater, bigger problem. And for me, that problem is my anxiety. And it's really common for people with addictions or mental health disorders to kind of just like swap disorders. Once one coping mechanism loses its effectiveness, we just kind of like trade it in for another. And that's essentially what I did in my life. I don't think I've fixed the actual problem, but I feel like medicating has definitely helped me at least get to a better place physically. I just can't effectively manage my anxiety when I'm sleep deprived. And when my anxiety is kind of at its lowest, my desire to control is at its lowest as well. So right now, at least I feel like this is what's working for me. And I'm just gonna continue to try to use these drugs because they're working for me while challenging myself outside my comfort zone or my safe routine. And I'll do that until I get to a place where I don't need these crutches anymore. And I think I'm actually getting relatively close. So I hope that was enlightening for you guys, or at least just kind of good to know. That's kind of where I came from and where I am today. If you like this video, don't forget to give it that thumbs up, chef's kiss. Leave me a comment below if there are other topics that you guys want to hear me talk more about. Subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye.